really?
I still can't go live.
Yeah, no, you can't. I couldn't go live for like, I think it was like 2 weeks.
They told me 30 days.
30 days. Oh, listen. Why you trying to jump, you Flint?
I didn't want to jump you in.
See, you do this again. Come on, Flint. Flint, don't playing with the hands and you yelling. Come on.
Why you had them jump me?
I didn't have nobody jump you.
So why didn't touch me for?
You touched me. You smacked my hand.
Alright, so what? Like, give me her.
Come on, Flint.
No.
Come on, see, Flint.
Jump me again.
Fans were left in complete shock as what was supposed to be a peaceful vacation with their fellow cast members descended into complete chaos. Witnesses say that while tensions have been building for days, everything took a drastic turn for the worse, culminating with Yandy Smith-Harris and Ems Harris in handcuffs just when we thought they were enjoying a tranquil holiday in Mexico. Before all hell broke loose, a heated argument turned into a full-fledged brawl with fists flying before anyone could stop it. The most shocking moment occurred when Mendeecees was quickly taken away in handcuffs by local authorities directly in front of Yandy. The biggest questions remain as to what caused this violent altercation, who else was involved, and most importantly, what happens next? Read on for all the inside information, first-hand recollections, and shocking revelations regarding this arrest that has Mexico in the news. At first, everything seemed ideal, with beaches, luxury resorts, and stunning ocean views. Fans have been excitedly watching as Yandy and Mendeecees seem to be enjoying life away from. The trip was supposed to be a mix of leisure and work, with time for both relaxation and filming, but Mendeecees' night took an unexpected and devastating turn. At first, everything seemed fine with music, but then it turned into a complete disaster instead of unwinding. I and several other cast members were caught up in a whirlwind of drama that ended in handcuffs. The resort's private bar was bustling with music and drinks, giving the impression that they had finally found some peace, but tensions were simmering behind the scenes. According to witnesses, earlier that afternoon, Mendeecees got into a heated argument, and the first indications of trouble started when Yandy, who looked stunning in a white summer dress, was enjoying cocktails by the pool with the ladies. Then, a certain cast member, a member whose name is being withheld for the time being, got into a heated argument with Mendeecees. According to those who heard it, it wasn't explosive at first, but it was tense. The voices were low but sharp, and the body language was clearly hostile. Insiders say it all began with a comment that really got to Yandy even tried to defuse the situation by gently placing her hand on M's arm, but it wasn't enough. It's evident that M's previous legal issues are a delicate subject, and let's just say that things quickly got out of hand. It was personal and about him and his family, and even though there wasn't a physical altercation at first, it was clear that the problem wasn't resolved because M was later seen pacing the resort, shaking his head, and talking to himself in an attempt to defuse the situation. By dinner time, tensions were at a boiling point. The sea gathered at a classy beachside restaurant with the hope that they could put the drama behind them. According to one source, the cast arrived in good spirits, at least initially, but then everything blew up. The same cast member who had previously argued with M brought up his past once more. At first, it was just a quick conversation, but because of the relaxed atmosphere and the alcohol, the cast member made another. There was silence at the table as Mendeecees stopped in the middle of his bite, tightened his jaw, and carefully put down his fork. "What did you just say?" The cast member leaned back in. At the time, everyone was laughing, drinking, and chatting, while Yandy and M sat at one end of the long table. For a brief moment, it seemed like the evening would continue without any problems, but then everything changed. A hustler will always be a hustler. He sat in his chair and smiled. "I'm just saying that some people never really change. They just get better at hiding it." Her eyes moved between the two men, and she could tell immediately where this was going. She touched M's forearm gently and said, "Come on, let's not do this right now, but it's too late." In a voice as low as the quiet before a storm, Mendeecees pushed his chair back and stood up, saying, "Come on, let's not do this right now." Before anyone could react, Day yelled, turning the table over and knocking glasses and plates on the floor. The hardwood deck clattered with cutlery as cast members staggered back and knocked. The table was holding their breath at this point. "You have one more chance to check how you speak to me." Security guards, sensing that things were about to get worse, started to approach. As M's fist hit his opponent's face, the cast member stumbled against another table but quickly recovered, landing a punch of his own that caught Mendeecees in the jaw. Yandy cried out for him to stop, but it was too late. The two men were already deeply entrenched in a vicious battle at nearby tables, and customers flooded or pulled out their chairs to avoid the mayhem. Mendeecees became so enraged that he pushed a guard away and threw the cast member to the ground. Bottles flew off an adjacent bar, shattering glass, and it took multiple security officers to separate them. Mendeecees delivered a final blow to the ribs before being hauled away, his chest heaving with rage, anger, and restraint. Some cast members hid behind the bar to record the chaos, and security hurried in. Were mixed up on his face, but the damage was already done. He yelled at his opponent, who was now wiping blood off his split lip, as the entire restaurant was in a state of chaos, with some cast members loudly attempting to call Yandy, who was sobbing and shouting from in, to stop before things got worse. Staff members were muttering frantically, and patrons kept filming the mayhem, but worse was to come that evening. As everyone thought it was over, the restaurant was suddenly filled with flashing red and blue lights, and the police were on their way. The restaurant was filled with eerie shadows as their sirens blasted through the hot Mexican air, and the sound of glass breaking and the screams of horrified onlookers added to the confusion. Fell into total chaos, and for a brief moment, Yandy stood still. This was supposed to be a break from the stress of home, but instead, they were in the middle of a police standoff. Panic hit her like a wave as the flashing lights reflected off the restaurant windows. Mendeecees stood near his chest, still heaving from the fight, leaning against an overturned chair, and the cast member he had fought was spitting slurs and Yandy, one of the cast members, hurriedly whispered, her eyes darting toward the officers already pushing through the entrance. But Yandy stood frozen, unable to process the fact that in Mexico, things were different and that Mendeecees was clearly engraved with danger. He realized, wiping blood from the corner of his lips, that he had to leave because this was not some trivial reality TV drama. As the first police arrived shouting rapidly in Spanish, Yandy snapped out of it, her hands shaking as she held his arm. "We can't stay here," she whispered to the police. "We must leave, make an arrest." No, you don't understand," she begged, as staff members rushed to explain, waving their arms toward the broken glass, the upturned tables, and the two guys at the center of the chaos. For a moment, it seemed like Mendeecees would fight back, his body tense, his jaw locked, his mind screaming not to let this happen. But then he saw Yandy's face, and the sheer terror in her eyes stopped him cold. He was only protecting himself, and he was not at fault for this. A translator quickly stepped in and relayed the officer's statements, but the police weren't paying attention because they had seen enough. His future was being arrested for assault, and he had two options. Either he would be taken against his will, or he could leave voluntarily. Slowly, he raised his hands and Yandy broke down. No, this is not possible," trembling and turning to M with a look of desperation on her face. However, neither of them could do anything about it at this point. The other cast members stood frozen, unsure of what to do as Yandy's screams echoed, and officers wasted no time in grabbing him roughly and twisting his arms behind his back. The cold metal of the handcuffs snapped onto his wrists, and suddenly, Mendeecees was no longer a man on vacation, but an American being arrested in a foreign country. "You can't take him." The restaurant patrons whispered to one another, some still in shock at how quickly things had gotten out of hand, while the cast member who had fought Mendeecees sat back with a smug grin. Yandy wasn't going to let this happen without a fight, so she ran after them as they were being dragged toward the exit by the officers who ignored the people who had taken out their phones and recorded every second throughout the restaurant. When the police officers reached the police van, they stayed at Stony Fade and pushed the man inside without hesitation. He turned back his eyes, looking onto Bly, and had a look of helplessness and frustration on his face. He pushed Ems outside while frantically switching between broken Spanish and English, pleading with anyone to listen, please. He doesn't commit crimes. You're not getting it. Release him. The street was illuminated by flashing police lights, drawing a crowd of onlookers, some of whom were filming, while others were just watching in stunned silence. He muttered, "I'm sorry," but Yandy's tears and the siren's roar drowned him out. "We'll fix this. Hold on," Ben said as the police withdrew, and Yandy stood there, tears streaming down her face as she watched the love of her life disappear into the night. She had previously seen Ems in handcuffs, witnessed the highs and lows of his legal battles, but this felt like a nightmare that she couldn't wake up from. Her voice was raw with emotion as she said, "This can't be happening." Yandy wasn't done. She wiped away her tears, took a deep breath, and picked up her phone because there was only one more thing to call. The rest of the cast was still in shock from the chaos inside the restaurant. The staff had already started cleaning up the wreckage, broken glass, and overturned chairs, while the final few patrons whispered to one another, still in shock over what they had just witnessed. The lawyer's hands trembled as she dialed the number, her voice barely above a whisper, "We're going to fix this mess. I'm not leaving Mexico without you." After everything they had gone through, the officers had wasted no time in clamping the icy metal handcuffs over MC's wrists, throwing him violently and pulling his arms behind his back. The torment persisted even after he was released on bond. Suddenly, Mendeecees was not just a vacationer. He was an American citizen detained in a foreign country. The rest of the actors stood still, some too stunned to move, others struggling to film and pull out their phones, but the officers showed little concern despite Yandy's pleas. They pushed past them and dragged Ems toward the exit, whispering that she was desperate to get to Mendeecees. Yandy screamed, "You can't take him. He didn't start anything. He was just protecting himself." Ems turned just before they slammed the doors, his eyes meeting Y's, and he mouthed the words, "I'm sorry," but Yandy's sobbing and the siren shrieks drowned out everything he had to say. "We'll work this out," he said, "just release him." But it didn't help as the police pulled away, leaving Yandy frozen on the sidewalk. Everything had quickly escalated. Back at the hotel suite, Mendeecees sat on the couch with her phone in hand, perusing the endless stream of messages from friends, family, and cast members. Some of them offered support, while others were just seeking information. Mendeecees rubbed his temples, his frustration evident. "I know what you're feeling, but what do you want me to do? We can't just react emotionally. We have to keep quiet and let them spin whatever. We need to be careful with how we handle this," Yandy said, her arms crossed tightly as she stood near the window watching the city lights. The producer didn't waste any time saying, "We need to get ahead of this. The network is freaking out, and this is turning into a bigger scandal than we imagined." Yandy's phone buzzed, and she answered a call from the show's producer. There was a brief silence before the producer nervously laughed, adding, "You expected something to happen, didn't you? Let's just say that drama makes for great TV, but this was more than just TV. This was their life." The producers had fueled the feud between N and the other cast members for ratings, but now that it had gotten out of control, they were hurrying to clean up and wanted you and Mem to do a private. Yandy's jaw tightened as the producer continued to ask for her side of the story, emphasizing that this was not just some careless act of violence. She looked at the person watching her intently and said, "We'll think about it," before hanging up. Now they want to fix their mess. Yandy sneered, but the couple agreed to the interview, and the network installed it the next day. Cameras in their suite, and hired a well-known journalist to pose the challenging questions. As the interview began, video of the altercation played on the screen behind them. They knew they couldn't keep quiet because public opinion had already started to shape the story, and if they didn't take charge, someone else would. Surveillance footage revealed the other man repeatedly pushing him before he. The journalist turned to him and asked, "Some people are saying you were set up, that this was staged for ratings. What do you think?" "Look, I won't sit here and pretend reality TV doesn't exist. I've finally lost it. took a deep breath, and said honestly, I tried to leave, knowing that things were getting heated. I didn't come to Mexico for drama. I came to enjoy myself with my wife. But this person kept pushing me, testing me, and I lost my cool. Thrive on drama, but this wasn't a setup. This was real life. And when people are stressed and emotions are high, things can get out of control quickly. Before Yandy could say anything more, the journalist leaned in and asked, "Do you regret standing up for yourself?" I paused, and no fans were divided. I hate that my family is going through this. I exhaled, looked down for a moment, and then stared straight into the camera. I didn't think he would actually swing on me like that, and now I'm the bad guy. Come on, dude. You don't even know the whole situation. I was just kidding around. Within hours of the interview going viral, some people applauded me for defending myself, while others remained doubtful. But one thing was certain, this story had just reached a new level. Carr looking directly into the camera, then went a step further to imply that the altercation was about more than just heated words, something more profound and personal, to put it mildly. Before long, the blogs began to circulate, twisting the story in all directions. Yandy was so incensed that she slammed her phone down upon seeing the new accusations. But what if? People believe him. But what if the network takes advantage of it and makes this even bigger? Yandy screamed and shook his head, saying, "Let him talk. He's just trying to stay relevant." He crossed his arms and remained calm, and we continued with business as usual. A few days later, they left Mexico in the hopes of putting the drama behind them. But as soon as they arrived in the United States, paparazzi were waiting with cameras flashing. Questions were circulating, including whether you paid to get out of jail and whether the show would fight you. Once a rumor started, it was nearly impossible to stop Yandy, who was exhausted from the chaos and sat on the couch still processing everything. She envied his composure, but she understood how this game worked. Yandy turned to face him, and she paused for a moment before grinning and asking why not both. Yandy raised an eyebrow and said, "What do you mean? This isn't over." Ignoring the chaos and navigating the media storm with Andy at his side, we let them talk and speculate before dropping our own bombshell. After closely observing him, Yandy realized that he wasn't just thinking about damage control, but also strategy, and she realized that this wasn't just a scandal. What did that cast member really mean? Will M and Yandy take over the story, or will the rumors worsen? Do you think Men was set up, or did he let his emotions get the better of him? Please let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications. It was an opportunity in the reality TV industry. Drama isn't just a problem, it's currency. This drama is far from over. To avoid missing the next explosive, this story has been updated. It's only the starting to keep a lookout.